Hold on. Let's just take a
Do you want me to keep going? I can keep going.
Hello, welcome back to Frequency Broads. I'm Tara. I'm here with Victoria and a very special guest, Dr. Kelsey. Would you like to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us what you do?
Sure. I am Dr. Kelsey. I'm a naturopathic doctor, and I work mostly in women's health related conditions, let's say. But I like to broaden it out more to that I really don't think of myself as treating conditions, but really supporting people, mostly women, feel their best and really optimize their health.
Well, we are so excited to have you on today. We have been talking about hormones all season, and we're going to dig into how to create hormone harmony. Before we dig into that, let's do a quick little freak check. Would you like to start, my dear Tara?
Surely. It just so happens that my period was late, so today is day 1 for me. They were like, "Oh, you're doing hormone talk? Here you go. Here's everything." So I've been feeling a little raw. I think too everything that's going on in the world, I've been trying to keep myself safe in my own body, and I think it kind of hit me this weekend. So a lot of crying, a lot of rawness, a lot of screaming and howling in the woods. Um, and as always, as soon as we step into this space, I can feel the energetic pouring in. I was just in here doing a class online and I was freezing. I was like in blankets and stuff, and now I'm like sweating. So here we are. I feel the energy flowing, even though like I'm feeling raw. I know it's exactly what's needed for today's episode. So I'm really excited to talk about hormones, especially on the first day of my period. So that's where I'm at today.
Happy cycle to you.
Thank you.
I am coming off a very busy yet relaxing week, celebrating my 35th birthday. I am so grateful to be this age. I really feel like fully like a woman, right? You know that Britney Spears song that's like, I'm not a girl, not yet a woman? I felt like that was me for the longest time. I was like, which department do I shop in? Or I still don't really know, but I feel really good in my body. I've been focused a lot on my subconscious thoughts and releasing outdated patterns of just things that have limited me and no longer serve me. And I feel so light and free and trusting my intuition, trusting the information that comes to me when I'm ready to hear it. And yeah, I am. What am I? My belly's full. My heart is even more full. And yeah. How are you feeling, Kelsey?
Oh my gosh. Well, happy birthday and happy moon day.
Thank you.
So many good things to celebrate. um, I am feeling really good. We had a really, really busy summer, and all up until last weekend, we've been basically like either full days going somewhere for like a day trip or just lots of activities. And we were just home this weekend.
Yes.
And it just feels like it's just so nourishing to just be at home tending to my space. Like I actually folded laundry and just, yeah, being more in that slower pace. We had like the crazy wind that came on Friday, and it was like all of a sudden it went from fall to bare trees. And I just really feel that like inner retreat starting to happen, and it feels really, really good. And I always hesitate for that transition because I'm such a summer person. Like the sun and the warmth is like my time. And so I always have a little bit of grief when that's over, but it feels, I would say the last couple of years, I've really been tuning more into the energetics of the season as a way to really like ground into my body and my experience, and it's been really fruitful. So I'm feeling really grounded in the season changes in particular.
I feel that too. I spent the entire weekend at home, which I wasn't planned, but I just like every day was like, nope. And yesterday we made a fort that was like an aisle long, and like forgot about the rest of the world to the point where we lifted the little sheet and I was like, oh, the light. Like I was like, I just need to be in this darkness, just hunkering down. So I feel that just like transition into full integration, full inward work,
Yeah,
juiciness.
it's so potent. It's so good. Mhm.
Well, one thing that I'm feeling called to share more of on future episodes is just solutions to fighting climate change that you yourself can focus on. And there's a really wonderful book called Drawdown by Paul Hawken. Over 50 different scientists were brought together to come up with, I believe it's 100 solutions to fighting climate change. And one of them is access to reproductive health. Another one is just general education for women in their body specifically. And so I feel so deeply passionate about today's topic and am so grateful, Kelsey, that you are willing to share your medicine, your expertise with all of our listeners today, because we all deserve access to this information and perhaps even a new perspective shift on what it means to tune into your hormones, regardless of your interest in your fertility or conceiving, but just having a better understanding of what it takes to live in harmony with all of the inner workings happening inside of you.
I love so much that you introed that all of that with climate change. I was just driving with my 6-year-old today, we were trying to like problem solve how we could use less plastic. We
Yes.
watched
Mm-hmm.
the second Our Planet last night. We do like when we're home on Saturdays, we usually do like a docu series or something with the kids when we eat dinner, and it was so such a beautiful reminder. And like especially watching it with the kids of this way of like, oh my gosh, this is such a responsibility that we have
Mm-hmm.
to educate them. And so I love the interwoven component of how much education about our bodies and how we tend and care to our bodies is also making a global impact for the future generation. And that starts now with what we know and how we model all of those aspects. Mhm.
Absolutely. And that's kind of where I wanted to get started too, was like not just the education, but just the youth in general. And like, I don't know if this is something that you really have like a specialization in, but just that transition into puberty. Now that I work with middle schoolers and watching a lot of them go through puberty, and that's male and female, but really with the females and them not knowing their body and what's to expect, and the immediate push, and I know this is like two different topics here, but the immediate push for them to go on birth control to solve all these problems before actually looking at what the issue is. I know the same thing was true for me, and it's hard for me because I know that there's so many people who aren't educated in that are just like, yes, the pill, yes, the pill, and like it's not my place to go against their parents, but I would love to see more, and I'm working with the sex ed teacher to give them at least other options to learn about their body before they start taking this pill that's affecting their hormones that are changing on
Mhm.
purpose. They're changing. You're going through puberty. It's supposed to be a little chaotic. So that's kind of
Yeah.
where I wanted to start too, is that transition into experiencing this influx or movement of our hormones levels.
Mhm. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I don't work specifically with the pubescent
Mm-hmm.
change, though. So a lot of my work is in preconception health and fertility care, which is like women coming off of the pill, let's say, wanting to optimize their hormones and get pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
But the core of what I love doing that work for, preconception healthcare, is that the way I really see it is we optimize our health before getting pregnant. We're actually setting our bodies up for having healthier children. We're setting our lifestyle. We're changing the way we take care of ourselves to a really intentional way, where then we're taking care of our children really intentionally
Mm-hmm.
and fighting climate change. But that all starts preconception, because trying to make those lifestyle changes, nutritional changes, whatever it might be, with an infant is near impossible. Like
Mm-hmm.
I really see like pace of life where when we establish these really healthy patterns before that season of life even comes, then it's so much easier to maintain that progress and go on for years with healthier outcomes. And I've thought so much in my the years of doing this that what I actually need to be doing is targeting girls going into puberty. Like that's actually the root of it,
Mhm.
right? So I love that you have also seen that just in your work. I mean, I was put on the pill at 13 by my pediatrician for heavy periods. I was super anemic. My mom would have to pick me up from school on the days of my period because I like nothing would stop my flow from
Yeah.
just coming all the way through everything I was wearing. It was
Mhm.
so embarrassing. I played a ton of sports when I was a kid and I wouldn't go to practice during my period because it was so intense. And so, yeah, the option was really like, we'll start you on the pill at 13. And um, I definitely wish looking back on it. And my mom was always like she ran a natural, like an organic food co-op out of our garage in the suburbs of Orange
I
County.
love
Like she
that.
was always like let's find an alternative to this situation. But she didn't really have any other education herself
Mhm.
as a mom as a way to give me more information. She came from that generation of we don't talk about it. We don't really talk about our bodies. And I feel like our generation is really like pushing against that in this way of wait, actually, this is a huge opportunity for empowerment. Right? It's like, I want to know about my body. I want to know what's happening. I want to be able to be in charge of decisions about what I'm going to put in, on, around my body, all of those things. Um, so I think that yeah, the education for girls is such a great place to start. And in terms of using, I'm not against hormonal birth control at all. If that's the option for contraception that
Mhm.
somebody's wanting to use, I'm all for it. But I do think that it's often used as a way to balance hormonal issues like PCOS is a really common condition that people are given, like the IUD, a Mirena IUD for, or hormonal birth control or endometriosis, even menopause, perimenopause is this new category of, women that I really see this happening all the time with. I do a lot of consultation work too for other providers in terms of like how to navigate hormones and even hormone replacement therapy and stuff. And I was just talking last week with this other doctor that I'm doing consultant work for, and she had a case of like perimenopausal woman who was just told that she needed to take the pill. And I'm like, there's so many other ways that we can really support the underlying aspect of what's changing in your body, right? Puberty is change, perimenopause is
Right.
change. And really, if we can encircle all of that aspect of our womanhood, of our like adult life as, these bodies with lots of hormonal changes, with education and understanding of what's happening, I think so much would improve personally.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's education of everyone, not just of young women, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm so excited to be working with the sex ed teacher and be like, this is not a lesson for those who have a uterus. This is a lesson for everyone because we interact with people who have uterus, who are going through these cycles monthly, who are
Mhm.
experiencing hormones fluctuating in different stages of their life. And, I think a big part of us taking back like, oh no, this is a powerful thing for us, what we're experiencing, and this is a part of our cycle and we can use it to our advantage, happens when what, or at least what I'm seeing is it's happening as we get older. And I want to give that
Mhm.
to the girls going through puberty.
Mhm.
And we do that by showing the boys that it's not something to be grossed out about, that it's not taboo, that it's not, this terrible, terrible thing, even though it can cause like cramps or, fatigue or other thing or irritability, which it happens to me every month, happened to me yesterday.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
I want to show them like something that I think is quite funny. And I think I was kind of in the same position and I wonder how you two feel about it. Um, but now I've changed. Anyway, when a guy asked me like, "Oh, are you on your period?" Right? Like all my friends are like, or I hear people like, "How dare they ask me that?" And I guess the question, like, it's really where is that question coming from? But when Andrew
Mhm.
asks me, even if there's an anger tone in his voice because I'm getting snippy, it's for him to be like, "Oh shit, there's something else contributing
Mhm.
to the level of intensity, and it doesn't take away to the emotion from the emotion itself or the message that I'm trying to give, but that connection to him go, oh." okay, you're in this phase of your cycle, which means that I need to support you in this way, or I need to like give you some space, or, so
Mhm.
I think taking away that taboo by teaching everyone about the female cycle is going to be the most powerful thing.
Mhm. I love that so much. I totally agree. I mean, and I love that example because, um, like everything, like how the question is asked matters, but how we receive it is really what the whole experience is about. And I just this is last weekend, a friend said the same thing that her husband was like, "Oh, you must be on your period." Like she was kind of working through, like, am I having some symptoms that need some support, whatever. And I was like, maybe he was just trying to tune in.
Hmm.
Like, maybe that's really all it's about. But I do think that there's like this more like cultural experience of like the weight that comes to like I need to hide, or like my period is something that I shouldn't be talking about, or whatever it might be. Yeah,
Hmm.
I feel you on all of those pieces.
Well, I think as I've gotten older, I've really come to learn to celebrate my period as well as ovulating, whether it be painful or icky or just, the whole range of emotions that come with either part of the cycle. And I feel like so many women, especially those of us, I was also placed on birth control at a very young age. We just did not understand what ovulation meant. Like it was kind of this theory of like birth control does something with your ovulation, but then when you get off of birth control and you start to learn your cycle and track, and thankfully we're at this day and age where there are amazing apps out there where they will break down what each phase means and what to expect, and then even what to eat or how to exercise during those phases. But the power of ovulating and how important it is for a woman to tune into their power of ovulation as well as bleeding, because there's nothing better than that first day that you are bleeding and like the floodgates open and you're like, it's just like such it's a relief. It's almost, it's like an orgasm in a way where you're just like, ah, all right.
You can relax.
If you're not trying to conceive, of course, right? It's like, it's wild how it can either be a sign of relief or on many fronts or complete disappointment. And knowing, I think, a process for grieving and or celebrating, whatever the case may be. Do you
Hmm.
teach your clients that kind of the grieving process or the celebration process of your cycle?
Yeah, I do. I love that so much. And I also wanted to ping back to what Tara was saying a minute ago of like the when our partners or loved ones or friends like are trying to like connect with what part of our cycle is that there are these energetic components of our cycle too that I really love breaking down for people. And that menstruation week, like the day 1 to like day 7, let's say, is usually how we break it down, is one where we like really want to just like retreat, kind of like we we're talking about seasonally, but also with your like,
Hmm.
tent or fort you made yesterday. Like, what a beautiful representation of what's actually really happening for us
Hmm.
in that day 1. Maybe to day 4 is when it's most potent for a lot of women. And um, I love talking through like, I don't want to use the term ritual necessarily because it can be very small. It can be just like a mental note of like, I'm feeling this particular way right now. Um, or recognizing, yeah, just what's coming up when the period comes. If it is a celebration, if it is a release, and sitting with that feeling for a moment, like really tuning in to like, this feels different. Like something's changed from yesterday to today. What is that? Whether it's
Mm.
naming it or journaling about it or going for a walk and just pondering how you're feeling. But it's such an opportunity to tune in into how we're feeling personally. And then in terms of like, someone who is trying to get pregnant, it is such an experience of grief. And I think grief is one of those things that we just don't have enough resources for. I attended a grief ritual for the first time this summer and has really helped me step into supporting more women through that process when they are trying to get pregnant of their period coming. And how that looks, just kind of in a brief synopsis, is to really feel grief for that event happening,
Mm-hmm.
like the period coming on that first day. As you said, Victoria, as like the floodgates open, as there's movement in the body, really feeling into the experience of surrender.
Mm.
And feeling that as long as they can and need to, of letting yourself cry, letting yourself lay in bed all day. I think so much in our culture, we're like, oh, I still got to go to work. I still got to show up for my family. I still
Mm-hmm.
got this thing to do. But actually, like, we can take that time back and we can say, I need a self-care day. I need a bed day. I'm just going to chill. And there doesn't need to be questions about it. There doesn't need to be justification. It can just say, I need this time. And to really take that day, at least a day. Sometimes it needs to be 2 days. But I think the more we embrace those feelings, the more we can then day 2 or 3 come out and say, okay, like that happened. And now the beautiful part is that day 1 is when everything starts building again.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything starts growing for this next opportunity, for this next phase. Like such a monthly reminder of the importance of death and rebirth, right?
Mm.
This like death of this hope, of this everything that you poured into that particular cycle trying to get pregnant, and then this new opportunity that's growing, that's nourishing your body for the next opportunity.
Mm-hmm. And I think Victoria and I have talked about, I don't know if we've ever mentioned it on the podcast, but we've talked about it with each other that in where we are right now, neither of us are looking to conceive. However, energetically in our bodies, when we have our period, there still is this moment of grief because our bodies are in the stage where it's looking, hormonally, it's looking to get pregnant. And that's not what we're looking for. And for whatever reason, however way, we're not doing that, right? But our body still feels this moment of grief where it's sad that we're not pregnant, even if it's not something that we're looking for in this moment.
Mm. I love that. I've never thought about it that way before. Yeah, the mental, emotional changes that we feel when that period comes can, in some way, energetically be related to this like biological expectation that our bodies have in this season of life.
Hmm.
That's
And
beautiful.
it's interesting too, because in the class that I just took earlier, they talked about, it was a spiritual class, and it talked about like getting pregnant as well. And it mentioned how, like, we affect so much of our body. And we talk a lot about that in this podcast. And I want your opinion on this. She talks about how our thoughts affect our body so much that, yes, biologically, there will come a point where, like, it's going to be more challenging or may not be in the cards for you. But ultimately, if you get in the headset, like, if at this age I'm no longer going to be able to get pregnant, then guess what? At that age, you're no longer going to be able to get pregnant because you're resisting that. And I know that's something that I've feared for a long time because my mom's side of the family started menopause at early 30s. So I was like, oh my God. And then once I was like, it is what it is, my body was like, no, we're not going to go, we're not doing that, we're not going through that, that's not in the cards for you right now. So I wanted to hear your opinion on that, like where our mind plays so much into our ability to get pregnant, or like that phase of no longer being able to get pregnant.
Yeah, I resonate with that so much. I have an online fertility course called Fertile Future, and the whole first lesson, it's like a 12-week online course. The whole first week is all around mindset. Like it sets the stage from day 1 of like actually the way we're really going to get deep into the underlying healing component to your hormones, to your ovulation, your egg quality, your fertility, all those things is starts with the way that I think the way we tend to and take care of our bodies,
Mm-hmm.
which starts with the mindset of how we treasure this body temple that we get to walk around life in, right? And I totally 100% agree. I see women a lot of times, a lot of times people will come in once they've already seen specialists, or that for all different types of conditions, not just for fertility, but all types of things. They've already seen other doctors and they're coming in for like some sort of a second consult, right? And so they'll already have that seed planted of like, um, the way I frame it is like something's wrong with my body's broken, like something's not working, something is really the matter here. If I haven't been able to get pregnant, or I haven't had a period in 4 years, or whatever it might be, and this doctor wrote it off, and this person didn't have anything to offer. Like I hear that all the time. And I literally start the first thing that I do with everybody is like, what can we do to reframe that? Because I actually think that your body 100%, like all of our bodies are always working towards finding homeostasis or
Mm.
that
Mhm.
balance. And then we have our environment and we have stressors and we have hormone issues. And I see a lot of gut issues contribute to this like slightly off kilter way that our bodies then function. And we definitely support like the physical component of it. But we first have to believe that it's possible that
Mm.
we can get better. And I see that as a barrier a lot of times for folks who come in. I talk about this a lot with, I also have students that shadow me in my private practice. And one of the things I always tell them is, a lot of people are going to come in wanting you to like fix them, like
Mhm.
to do the healing for them. And I always try and be really clear to people when we do our initial consult that I am not going to heal you. Like, I'm not going to fix anything with your health. I am providing information and education and the tools for you
Mhm.
to take with you and do what you want and what you can. And I'll support you along the way. And if something feels challenging, we're going to pivot and we're going to do something else. And I'm trying to figure out exactly what it is that your body needs you to do to solve this puzzle, but it's really your body. Your
Mhm.
body is the wise one here. I'm just trying to hold it up on that pedestal so that you can get and experience all that you need out of it. Yeah, it makes such a difference.
Mm.
I'm curious if I definitely want to talk about gut health because
Oh.
I I love a good cleanse. I love tuning into the gut in so many different ways, from my intuition to what is not working for my body to consume. And I think the thing that the gut, your liver, your thyroid, all of it has in common is estrogen, right? And I feel like estrogen has been this like taboo thing, but also not really fully understood. And then progesterone comes into the mix. And I think there's so much information out there that it's really hard, I think, to focus on like, what do I really need to know
Mhm.
for someone who just wants to maintain homeostasis and feel good in their body? Like, what would you say are the biggest takeaways or words of wisdom you can pass along?
Mm.
Specifically for gut health, is that kind of to wrap it all in? Or are we talking about gut and liver and thyroid and all of the
Kind
things?
of all of it.
Mm,
Because
okay,
you can't have one without the other, right?
it's true. We're all really connected. Um, I mean, so if I were to break down like my 5 tips of optimizing all of those things, like optimizing our health in general, it would be to build stress resilience. Yep. Sleep, making sure we're getting quality sleep. And I would say 60% of people aren't getting quality sleep.
Mm.
Like you can be in bed for 8 hours and be asleep for 8 hours and not be getting quality sleep. So I define quality sleep as like having long enough time in that deep, deep sleep. And usually that's about an hour and a half to 3 hours for people. And we just don't know really, unless we're like tracking somehow. Um, or another like symptomatic way that I measure sleep is if you're waking in the morning feeling rested.
Mhm.
Like if you wake up like, I'm so ready for this day, whatever comes at me is like, I got this. Or if you are in that like slow to wake, to get out of bed, which I feel like this time of year is everybody because of the darkness. But
Yeah.
that is a like symptom that I quantify with how restful is your sleep. So sleep is a big one. Digestive function, like just to talk about the gut in and of itself, that is like the hub of where we're absorbing all of the nutrients we eat. And I talk about this all the time that we can be eating a tip top shape, every like all organic, all of the nutrients, every little micro and macro nutrient that our bodies need. But if our gut isn't absorbing those nutrients well, we're probably wasting a lot of money on healthy food
Mm.
and time and energy making it, right? So, really optimizing gut health, which, golly, sleep and stress can also impact our gut.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, talking about them all being interconnected. So, gut health is huge. And then drinking enough water is another like really basic one that again, like more like 70% of people probably aren't drinking enough water. Mm-hmm.
I do not drink enough water.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, I consider myself a sim when it comes to sleep. I've mentioned that before. My eyes open. I'm like, yay, ready for the day. So I'm like, good. Sleep quality is good. But I feel like I have stress and sleep under wrap. My gut
Mm-hmm.
health, I don't seem to have a problem with, but
Mm-hmm.
but the water, oh my God, I am so
Mm-hmm.
terrible with drinking water. And it's not just water, it's just liquids. I
Mm-hmm.
swear to God, I swear to God. I know in your brain receptors for hunger and thirst are the same, and I snack like no other, and I will not drink a
Mm.
single thing of water. And it's not until after that I was like, shit, I went into the kitchen for water and I grabbed pretzels. How are we here? How are we
Oh,
here?
such dehydrating pretzels.
Literally, like I just do things to dehydrate myself more. So good to
Mm.
know, even though I already know that, good to know that is also affecting my hormones as well.
Mhm. Oh my gosh, totally. And like I think of water as our body's primary way to detoxify, right? It's what's carrying things to filter through the liver, to
Mm,
filter through the kidneys. It's like it's we think of water as like purifying and cleansing in and of itself, and it's doing the same thing inside of our bodies. One fact that I always share with people that I find really fascinating is when we feel thirst, when we actually get that like neurologic signal that we're thirsty, our brain is already low enough on water, like
yeah,
too low with water. So like the idea is to like drink more in regular intervals as to where we aren't necessarily getting to that thirsty cue component. And then I would recommend maybe like when you go, like if you feel like the urge to snack, have water first. And then maybe that's really what your body is telling you need.
that's definitely what my body is telling me I need. And I've gone on like things like I've tried to get in there. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. I'm such a
It's
water
hard.
baby. I
It's
love
real
being in the water. I love being near water, but drinking water, I don't know. Like
Mhm. I see that a lot with people that work in education and
you know
nurses.
what? The amount of times that I wasn't even like not okay. I'm using the word allowed by my own standards. Not that anyone was like, you can't take a break and drink, but you don't. I'm sure as a mother, you feel the same way. Like you don't
Mm,
have a second. Like you're not allowed. No, because there's too many things
mhm,
and too many
mhm,
people that you're in charge of to do that. And I think that's what
mhm,
I've granted, I've always struggled with it, but I think that
mhm,
perpetuated the habit of not drinking anything. Because now that I don't work in the mornings, I'll wake up
mhm,
and I do 50 million things, and all of a sudden, I woke up at 7:30. All of a sudden, it's 12:30, and I haven't drank anything
mm,
or eaten
mhm.
anything, and I'm just like, "Oops,
Yeah.
I'm withering away."
I love that. I mean, it's really common. It's so, so, so common. And even like when my kids were younger, like to comment on like the being a mother component is, um, I remember reaching this point where I was like, I actually need to do this thing, not just for myself, but because I'm modeling for them
Mm,
what it means to say, I'm going to have to get back to you in a second. I really need to drink some water. Mom's really thirsty. And that conversation happens in our family all the time of like, oh, like I'm really at this time I just really need to take care of my body, or way to take care of your body for
mhm,
taking yourself to the bathroom when you needed to go to the like those little moments. And I think just like you said, when we're doing 50 million other things, it's that invitation, that opportunity to tune back in and say, actually, what do I need right now?
mhm. I will say
Hmm.
the times that I drink the most water is when my students know that because I'll always tell them, I'm like, "I'm dehydrated, I've been to the hospital many times for it." So they'll be like, "Tara, did
Yeah.
you drink today?" And we'll like, "Cheers." And I will slam
Yeah.
so much water because like there's like 50 students on me with my water, So that's that.
Yes, accountability, that's one of the things I talk with my patients about is, like, finding a buddy
Mhm.
that you can be accountable with, like, "How much water did you drink today?"
That
That can be a big
that good
tool.
old accountability buddy. But I wanna
Mhm,
bring us back because you said
mhm,
stress,
mhm.
sleep, gut health, water, but there was 5.
5. I think my 5th is gonna can I make it a 5 and a 5.5?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, I'm, like, torn between movement, like moving our bodies
Mm.
with intention, and that doesn't have to be, like, running marathons or anything big, but, like, getting movement, increasing circulation in our bodies. And then, because that helps again with all the things. It helps with stress, it
Mhm.
helps us sleep better, it helps with our gut function, it helps with oftentimes we're inspired to drink more water and take better care of ourselves when we like have that 15, 20 minutes a day or more of like intentional movement.
Mhm.
And then the other one that I talk a lot about that I'm really passionate about, circling back to climate change, is like environmental exposures, right?
Mm.
So much of hormones and our detox and our gut health is negatively impacted by synthetic chemicals in our environment. Just throw that a little one in there.
Well, here's my guilty plug. I think when it comes to just ways that I can improve, I love perfume, and
Oh
I've
yeah.
loved perfume my whole life. And granted, I try to go with high quality perfume, but I know that it's still full of toxic chemicals that interrupt my hormones.
Mm.
Um, I actually just started wearing essential oils like this weekend as a way to just like try to introduce a new way to like, because I need that like sense of stimulation. Um, but I want to actually talk real quick about my other guilty pleasure, which is coffee first thing in the morning and that cortisol spike. I think when I was doing my liver cleanse, tried to do just like hot water, lemon, or just water, or my pineapple cucumber juice. And I noticed such a difference. But is there anything that you can share for someone trying to kind of kick the habit of,
Mm.
because it really ties into having quality sleep, right? Because I'm waking up super exhausted. I'm like, I need that little kick start. Is there anything that I can maybe start to implement into my daily practice to not depend on that caffeine spike to get me up and going?
um Yeah, that's a great question. I was like a guilty caffeine, like for like right when I wake up, I want coffee. It's like my number one thing. I've switched to decaf, which has been a huge life changer for me in terms of cutting down on the caffeine intake. Um, I think first off is like playing with what our relationship is with that ritual. Because a lot of times it's like the nourishing component that we are really looking for.
Mm.
So if warm water with lemon isn't like hitting it for you, then finding something else that might be, whether it's like a tea or something like that. The big thing that we want, our cortisol is going to rise with caffeine more so, significantly more, if we aren't also eating. So a lot of times if folks still want to have that morning coffee, I'm like, great, also have some food with it
Mm.
or put collagen or butter or like something with some substance in the coffee to help normalize that metabolic shift that
Mm.
happens with cortisol. Mhm. So I'm not if it's something that feels really nourishing for you, right? Having your coffee, do it and maybe add it or have it later with breakfast or with some protein, or finding a different type of a nourishing morning ritual. But
Mm.
yeah, coffee, caffeine, um, you know, having more of a carbohydrate heavy breakfast is something that can really shift that cortisol in the morning and really dysregulate hormones throughout the day.
Mm.
Mm.
Oh, carbs.
I love carbs so much.
But the older you get, I think the less they love you.
Probably. I can feel it, especially, I mean, I'm on my period, but also this bloating. Andrew and I have been eating bread for snack because we love bread. It's so good. Um, but I want to come back to this introducing the toxic or the outside influences that's affecting your hormones. What other things? Because I like, and obviously there's a million things, right? But can you give like broad maybe ideas? Because I didn't even think about perfume. I didn't even think
Yeah,
about
perfume's
that
huge.
being something as a so obviously we know food and like the chemicals that are on our food, but what other things might be influencing us that we aren't recognizing are actually toxic or are like affecting our hormones?
Mm, what a good question. Okay. So perfume is like definitely one of the big ones. Anything we're putting on our body, soap, makeup, body wash, lotion, all of those things
Mm.
often contain chemicals. So anything with a synthetic fragrance, and you can like read the label of your item and it will say fragrance or parfum. um, if it doesn't list specific like plant oils, essential oils, it just says natural fragrance, also synthetic
Mm.
fragrance. It needs to list the exact actual plant matter that is contributing to its deliciousness. Um, But aside from just fragrance, there are other chemicals that can basically function in the body as what's called a xenoestrogen or a synthetic estrogen. And it looks so much like estrogen that it sits in the receptor of your normal estrogen. And all of our hormones work on a feedback loop, which means there's receptors for the hormone. Some tissue in the body makes the hormone. Let's continue to use estrogen as an example. So, estrogen is primarily made in the ovaries in women. It's going to circulate through the body. It's going to sit in those little estrogen receptors. But if there's synthetic estrogen, it's going to stay in that receptor. So, it's going to send the signal back to the ovary to say, oh, we haven't received. So it sits in the receptor, but it doesn't have the action of estrogen.
Mm.
So then it sends a message back to the ovary, and the ovary says, oh, we haven't received the estrogen yet. So it continues to make more estrogen. So
Mm.
xenoestrogens are a common condition or a common experience that we see in bodies with having high estrogen or estrogen dominance. Overproduction of estrogen is when we have more of that environmental exposure to those fake estrogen compounds.
Mm.
So that's one example. Water is another one, like making sure, we're pretty fortunate in Portland to have pretty clean water, but that's not the case all over. So making sure that your water is filtered if possible. Um, and then plastics is another big one. And that's like, we can switch to glass water bottles and whatnot, but it's also like food products, like canned foods, like canned beans often contain a liner that has BP. It'll say BPA free, but the alternative is either BPF or BPS, which is exactly the same thing as BPA. They
Mm.
just put it in there under the legislation so that it's not something that needs to be flagged, but it will always have a liner that if you're eating enough of those types of foods, it can also contribute to more of that xenoestrogen experience in the body.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ugh,
Mhm.
so many things.
So many
We just need
things.
to be
I
living out
know.
on the farm. We just need to go to your mom's commune
My
and
mom.
just be like, this is where I'm getting my food. I know it's source. It's got good
I know.
energy in it.
Mhm.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Actually, I do want to just quickly say there, I think, is a mental shift that there's an opportunity to perceive this differently because it does seem very overwhelming. It does seem like the world is
Mm-hmm.
against us. It does seem like we're surrounded by toxic poisons, right? And I am curious if there's any kind of like mindset shift, and maybe
Mm.
it plays into like you taking ownership for your health and well-being and you doing what you can to limit your exposure, right? But even in that, having some sense of the world is not against you, you're not surrounded by poison, right? Because I think it's just when you start going down this rabbit hole of seeking this information, it just feels like there's no solution or end in sight, right?
Totally. And I have sat with that a lot because when you're in it, like I'm, doing research on all this stuff, needing to be really educated about it myself in order to be able to um, teach and help other people navigate it. It can be really overwhelming. And I really come down to like, there's only so much that I can do. Like, even if we live in a
Mm-hmm.
toxic world, which we do, um, I can be in control and not obsessively in control
Mm-hmm.
of what I'm putting in on and around my body. And this was super potent for me when I had little babies at home, like precious skin that I needed to protect. So much of that was really important to me. Um, but I also was really important. And now that my kids are older and eating Halloween candy and like exposing themselves to other things that I don't love so much, like I also need to not push my rigidity on them. So it's been
Mm.
a really great mirror to reflect back to me of like I also want to have the freedom to be able to live my life and make conscious choices.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of that like middle of the road that I usually sit with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
that. Because I too get into that rabbit hole, and like Victoria said, then you're just like, oh my god. But
Mhm.
it's the same thing with like climate change. Like, am I doing enough? Like, I'm so glad that you brought up that book, Victoria, about
Mhm.
how what we can do. I think for myself, like being vegan, I feel contributes a lot to like in a good way. But then sometimes like that, like you mentioned the can of beans, and I forgot about that, and I'm like, oh my god, like shit. Now I got to start doing that.
Mhm.
But you're right. It's about knowing that you can do so much and that if sometimes like you slip up here and there, like you're taking care of your body enough that it'll be able to
Exactly.
fight or like be resistant to or be able to detox what you're doing because you're not consistently introducing that into your body. So thank you for bringing me back, because I was like, oh my God. Thank
Yeah.
you for that.
It's so good. And I think about a lot of times as like the cup analogy, right? Like if we were to like, eat a bunch of processed foods and live like a really toxic life, doing all the vices and whatever, like our cup would be filling up with that toxic burden. And then we do something like drink filtered water or go on a run, and a little bit of that like pours out,
Mm-hmm.
right? We're able to like relieve some of the burden on our body. So it's this constant dance that we're doing with our environment, both what we're surrounded by and what we're putting inside of our bodies. And rarely does it like fill over. And when it does, that's like the perfect message from our body
Mm-hmm.
that something can change. It's like an opportunity, it's a gift, right? Of like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I have this symptom, I'm going to give you some diarrhea. Okay, listening. Something's got to
Yeah.
change. I'm going to, rein it in a little bit. So the more we can develop that relationship, I think, with our bodies, of just having the space to tune in and say, like, how did that make me feel? Or, what can I do differently next time when I'm in that situation, or whatever it is, it's a constant opportunity to tune in.
Thank you.
I I like to call that dance detox retox. Um, and I think a lot of cultures around the world have some sort of detox that they implement, and it's completely normal, right? And I know that we're kind of bombarded by all of the ways in which we can detox our bodies. Is there one in particular that you would
Mm.
recommend? I know there's probably no one size fits all, but something at least to just like jumpstart the cleansing of the liver or the gut, or just to kind of give you a fresh start.
My favorite way to support detox is castor oil packs. Do you guys know castor oil packs?
I don't.
Yes,
Oh,
yes, yeah.
yay.
Wait, but I
Okay.
don't. Can you explain it a little bit?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
I totally will. Okay. Um, So castor oil is a really viscous, sticky oil. It's something you only want to put on your body, or if you take it internally, it can cause diarrhea. Speaking of, but it has a really high affinity for the lymphatic system, and we have a lot of lymph nodes
Mm-hmm.
throughout our body, right? And they're usually like right under the surface of the skin. So there's a bunch like in the neck and the clavicle, but there's a lot in our abdomen also that kind of stay between, let's say, between the skin and the digestive system. So the castor oil has a high affinity for the lymphatic system, so we can use it topically, like rub it on the belly, rub it over the liver space, rub it over the womb, and it helps just flush the body, through the
Mm.
lymphatic system. And it's so easy, it's really cost effective. It just takes intention and ritual or routine in terms of using it, but it's one of the best ways that I find supports hormone balance, supports gentle detoxification, supports healthy bowel movements for anyone struggling with constipation. It's like one of my go tos for making sure that we can eliminate regularly and completely. Um, yeah, that's one of my go tos
So you
for
mentioned
sure.
it as like a ritual or routine, right? When we hear the word detox, especially with like fad detoxes, it's usually like, do this for a week, do this for a month. Are you saying that this is something that you should keep as like a routine in your self-care routine or morning routine? Or
Yeah, I mean, I do it like 3 to 4 days a week, and I have for 12 years on and
Wow.
off, like
wow,
not
that's
in
amazing.
pregnancy,
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
It feels so good. Like it's so, yeah, it's one of those things where I can be like, oh, I'm tipping out my cup a little bit, giving my liver a little love for the day from all that it's done for me, things like that. So it's one of the oldest naturopathic hydrotherapy. It's like a, branch of naturopathic medicine is hydrotherapy. We're using like water, alternating temperatures to support the body
Mm.
processes. So a lot of times the castor oil will be done with also added heat. So like to do a castor oil pack is the castor oil with a little hot pad or hot water pack on top.
Mm.
So the heat helps it permeate into the tissue and have more of an effect. Yeah, it's like one of the like little touch points, right, that we can do routinely throughout our lives. And then I would also add drinking water.
I
I'm not like a
guess.
big yeah, I mean, kind of to your point, Victoria, or maybe it was Tara, like the fad
Hmm.
detoxes, right? Like, oh, I really need to give my liver some love. Is I always really, mm, I don't always recommend things like that, to be honest, because I think that we're more well served by having these subtle, continual touch points
Mhm.
of how we can improve our health rather than, you know, binging on Halloween candy and then, okay, now I need to do a liver detox or whatever
Mhm.
it might be. Like these, this oscillating experience about it. I think the constant touch points are much more effective,
Mm.
personally.
Well, I'm sold because I'm more into the
Yeah.
constant little than like doing a
Yeah.
big, like, not extreme, like it's bad, but just like this big, intense thing. I'm like, no, just give me the little like meat, meat.
Mhm.
So I'm like ready
Yeah.
to run to the store after this.
I was the queen of the thrones. I have a code I can give you guys to pop in. I've like been keeping a list of all these different resources that I'll make sure I send
Oh,
to you
thank
for.
you.
Mhm,
Yes.
mhm, mhm. Yeah.
Okay, so I wanna jump back a little bit to the energetics of our cycle, and cycle tracking because, like we all said, we were all put on birth control early. One because I was nervous and I didn't really know about contracept, not getting pregnant. And I had just got my first boyfriend. And I was like, I haven't even had sex yet, but I want to go on the pill because I'm nervous, kind of thing. But also because I had terrible hormonal acne that still affects me today now that I'm off the pill.
Mhm,
But when I got off the pill, I think it took me like, I don't know, a year or two to get my cycle back on track. There was, well, probably not to go into everything, but probably a little bit longer because 2 weeks after getting off the pill, I got pregnant. So that was like a whole
mhm,
freaking um and
mhm,
then I experienced ovulation for the first time. That was scary because I didn't know what that was. And then my breasts shrunk a whole size and there was a huge grieving for that because I was just like, I feel like I'm not as much of a woman or like all these
mhm,
weird freaking things because of societal standards. But long story short, as soon as I got my cycle on track, and I bring this up because I think you had mentioned it in the webinar that we took with you,
mhm,
um, which was fantastic, by the way. You should check out Kelsey's
mhm.
webinars and classes and programs because they're amazing. But I think you mentioned paying attention to the cycle of the moon in related to your
Mhm,
cycle. And I wanted to talk
mhm,
a little bit more about that because for the first couple years, actually, like once I got aligned, I was aligned with the full moon, which felt very like, yes, I am in alignment with the energies of the moon. We are both releasing. And now, over the course of the past 2 years, I have shifted to the new moon. So I just kind of want
mhm,
um, your kind of thought on that because you mentioned like paying attention to the moon cycle and your own cycle. So why do you feel that paying attention to the moon is helpful, if not important?
mhm. Yeah, I feel like on the most foundational way that I encourage people to do that is, especially when cycles are irregular, um, which helps us get a touch point. Like we want our natural like moon cycle to be every 28 days, which is the exact same rotation of that cycle with the moon. Um, And I think from an energetics, so that's like more of like a functional, like I'm
Mm-hmm.
having 33-day cycles. Okay, like how can we tune in to the rhythm of the moon?
Okay.
Right, because like the moon changes the tides.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of like the mm, more broad understanding that I have with it is that as the moon changes the tides of the earth, let's say, our bodies, being the majority water, also feel energetic shifts,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which makes sense, right? We are connected, whether we think of ourselves in these isolated boxes with camera screens in front of us, like we are still human or still animals, right, living on planet Earth. So, the more we can kind of understand, let's say from a foundational level, where the moon is in relation to our bodies, that is one way that we can just kind of anchor into that rhythm
Mm.
of our environment. Um, to take it a little step further is within the energetics of the cycle, kind of like you said, you used to ovulate or have your period on the full moon or the new moon, and now it's kind of changed. There isn't one right way for our bodies to be aligned with the moon. To say that up front, like it's not if you're ovulating with a full moon or bleeding, that's right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But there tends to be this like tidal shift with women where it tends to be like either we're ovulating on the full moon or the new moon, or we're menstruating with the full moon or the new moon. Classically, it's been thought about as like the full moon, the ripe full moon is going to be ovulation, like the ripe egg around ovulation. That's how I remember it. But that's not always the case. And then full moon, like energetics, right? Where we're out later in the night. Like if we were to think about our bodies as animals, like we would be out later, we would have more energy, which is oftentimes when our hormones are cycling around that ovulation time as well. And then the new moon, we're retreating, we're bleeding, that type of energetic component. So it's helpful for us to think about that sometimes, like for women that aren't cycling regularly or naturally, that they can still go through that type of a cycle, right? So we still need a little touch point of like having a day in a fort to just feel our feelings, whether we're bleeding or not, right? And then, usually 2 weeks later, and I would argue even men like also have cycles, right? They're also going to be going through this energetic flow. To just help us better understand, rather than attaching to like, oh, I feel so off today, what's wrong, like I'm feeling so emotional, like to just know where the moon is, to know where our own inner tides are shifting.
Thank you.
Yeah, good question.
And I'm glad that you
It's fun to talk about.
mentioned men having their own cycle too, because I don't think that's talked about enough. I don't know. I literally don't know anything about it, so I can't even talk anything about it. But like hormonally, I don't know what's happening. But even just from what you said with the moon and us being humans who are made of water, which means that men are also going to have that cycle when it comes to the moon and the tides of affecting their hormones and the water within them. How it affects them, I don't know how differently it is to us, but it's so important for them to recognize that they also go through that. That's something that Andrew recognized. And it's very frustrating when our cycles line up. And I'm like, I'm allowed to be angry. You're not. Okay. No, not really. But it is something interesting, like when you are in any kind of partnership or friendship, to recognize that you're both going through cycles monthly.
Totally. And I think our culture is like, I'm super guilty of this, of feeling like I always need to be on, always need to be like giving everything my all. I always need to be like ready to go, very type A, very like let's get shit done. And then when I don't feel that way, I'm like, oh my gosh, something's wrong with me. What's happening? And then it's so nice to be able to, be more informed, about what's happening in my body and say, oh, it's that time of the month. I'm allowed to just not give it my all and take a bath this morning because that's my body needs. Lots of unanimous.
Yeah, just one other question. That, and can you solve my hormonal acne? No, that's like a let me come to you and work with you.
Hormonal acne, or acne in and of itself. I think we often pair it with hormones. Oh, this is another really interesting piece of the moon, is that we pair it with hormones a lot of times because it cycles, right? Like comes around the same time every month. But there's also things like parasites that hatch around the moon cycles. And so sometimes it might actually be that it's not our hormones and it's more of what's happening in our gut.
So if you're craving sugar around the time of the full moon.
Okay, I'm not going to lie. I'm like slightly freaking out.
So you can be freaking out, but I will say, coming back, this is going to be too much, but coming back to the fact that our bodies live on planet Earth with a bunch of other animals, and we eat a lot of plants.
Yeah.
We're all exposed to parasites all the time.
Yeah, well, God, I guess I gotta check that gut and make sure I'm not getting
God
parasites.
help.
But
I mean,
anyway.
It's multifactorial.
I'm like, I want to keep talking about parasites. And I think what I had mentioned earlier about a lot of cultures having some sort of detox practice that's like built into their culture, a lot of it is revolved around parasite cleansing. And so I'm curious, Kelsey, if you have any just tips on how to address like if you know you need to, I mean, the sugar cravings around the time of the full moon is definitely one indicator, but is there anything else to look out for? And I know that there are trends going around on like TikTok and Instagram for a while on like take this and it'll eliminate all your parasites, but it seemed too good to be true. And you know, I'm a huge fan of colonics. I think that might be how we all know each other ultimately is through the colonic person we go to. And um yeah, curious what tips you have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, one of the other ways, in addition to like sugar cravings, is when we have chronically low iron, or also another thing I see on labs a lot is low cholesterol. And like the general Western doctor would say, clean bill of health, your cholesterol's low, you know, no issues with having any issues with cardiovascular issues or whatever. But iron and fat, lipids, are a lot of the times what the parasites are going to be eating for fuel.
Mm.
So, like on a lab, I'm always looking for cholesterol to be at least 160 or higher. And a lot of times it's lower, 130, 120.
Mm.
And that was my case when I was not having periods. And I went in and I was like, something's wrong. My cholesterol was really low, and I'd always been told like everything's squeaky clean with your lipids. And then I was seeing a naturopath who was like, actually, let's dig into this a little bit
Mm.
more. And my gut was a total mess. And so I personally don't see a quick fix for parasites. Parasites and yeast overgrowth in the gut are two of the things that we tend to really have to get in there and do more ongoing extensive work. I now even have people do like, you know, if we know if we've tested and they have parasites, a lot of times I'll have them do every full moon, they'll do like 3 to 4 days of just another little drop in with their protocol. And I do usually use a blend of herbs. Sometimes I use antibiotics because that's what people want to
Mm-hmm.
use, and they just want to get in there and get it out. And I really, it's up to them. I do a lot of co-working with my patients because I'm not the authority. I'm just helping them along.
Mm. Well, I love that. I
But
love that you give your clients, like, here's all the things that can help you. And I'm going to let you be the sovereign creator of your own life and say, this is the tools that you can choose and what resonates with you. And if you test one out and it doesn't, I'm right here with you to choose something
100%.
differently. So that's beautiful.
Yeah, sovereign healthcare.
Mm-hmm.
Here for it.
Yes.
Yes. Mhm.
And hopefully that means I don't have any parasites because my blood work came back great. I wasn't low on
Okay,
anything. So maybe it's just
cool.
hormonal,
It's just hormonal.
which, clearly there's an imbalance there anyway. So something's got to go, or something's got to get
Oh,
tweaked and tended to. I
yeah,
shouldn't say
something's gotta get tended
something's got to get
to.
tended to.
Yes. Good up level.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So this question is totally off topic. We haven't really talked about fertility, but I saw this thing actually a couple times now, in a couple different ways. And it's something that we were never taught in health class that I wanted to see. I feel like you would know this because you're a fertility specialist, that it's the egg that chooses the sperm and not
Oh,
like
I love
and not the
that.
fastest swimmer, right? I read something about how like the egg sends out a chemical or like almost like a little like frequency or a little something that's like, this is the sperm I'm looking for. And then that sperm's like, that's me. And then the rest are like, not me. And like slows down. Is that true?
I haven't heard of that component of like sending out the frequency, but yes, that is how I understand it is like egg gets ovulated, it's traveling down the fallopian tube. There's millions, ideally, of sperm trying to get into the egg, and they can be trying to get in, and the egg just stands there, and it's like sovereign being, and it's like waiting, really waiting for the one that it finds or feels. I don't know, maybe it is like a frequency component. Feels is the right one, and then it opens up its little membrane and like swallows the sperm.
Okay, I love that concept because
It's so good.
you were literally chosen to be born. Like
Yep.
outside of
And
energetics,
it's the
like
egg.
yeah, and that egg that was inside your grandma
Mhm.
w-
It's really special.
already knew that it wanted you specifically to be born. I'm
Mm.
like, that is so powerful.
It's
Like,
so
even if we're
powerful.
not talking soul contracts, like you literally were chosen out of thousands of sperm floating and trying their best, and that
Mhm.
egg was like, you specifically. And that egg
Yep.
was created in the womb of your grandmother,
Your
right?
grandmother.
Yeah, your grandma.
Hmm.
That's so
Hmm.
beautiful.
It's so beautiful. When I break down like the like foundational component of like conception, it blows my mind every freaking time.
Hmm.
Sometimes when I need like an energy, like a mood lift, I'll like watch videos about this because it's like it's so incredible the way that it all really transpires. And we can get so caught up in the um like lab work and what's wrong with my body and why haven't I gotten pregnant because it's so consuming in
Hmm.
terms of like our experience, something we really freaking want to happen. um, but I oftentimes encourage folks to like take that little tiny micro step back and really see the whole picture of how we can optimize all these different elements of our bodies and of our health in order to um, have a really healthy baby.
Hmm. And I think too, when you know that and you have that in your mind, at least you can at least try to think too, like if I'm optimizing my body completely, my partner is as well, and we're both trying and it's not happening, then maybe that sperm hasn't gotten there yet. And like it's just wait, it's not that anything's wrong with anyone. It's just that sperm has not gotten there yet. And you just gotta be patient. And like hopefully that sperm, like I feel like when I'm ready to get pregnant, like if I was struggling, that's what I would try to keep in mind is like, yes, optimize myself. He needs to optimize himself, but ultimately it'll happen when the right connection happens.
Totally. So much yes. I love that you brought that up.
Well, Dr. Kelsey, we are so grateful you joined us today. I think that you have shared so much beautiful wisdom for people to take and integrate. And if you are interested in working with Dr. Kelsey, the link is below. Also, if you want to check out some of her webinars, links also included. So packed with great information. Can't say enough about your webinars or what do you call them, master classes?
Um, yeah, we
Okay.
can call them whatever we want, but
Okay, cool. Well,
they're going to be classes, courses. Yeah, it all works.
perfect.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's been so
You're
amazing.
so
I know
welcome.
you have some fun things coming up. I'd love for you to share a little bit about what programs or classes people can look out for.
Yeah. So I do have a couple of courses that are available that are around hormone health and gut health, a lot of what we talked about today. I also run a private practice here in Portland, and then I also run an online course called Fertile Future that is more geared toward folks trying to conceive. That's part of what your world is. And then starting in December, I'm also hosting a 6-week group program all around deep diving into our relationships with food
Mm,
because have seen this really common pattern, especially around women who want to make some type of a change to their health, whether it's getting pregnant or optimizing my hormones or improving my gut health. And they know that there's some component to what I eat matters. But I think that the actual food matters, but more than that, our relationship with how we're taking care of our bodies
mm,
and eating really matters. 70% of women report having some type of disordered eating patterns, whether currently or past. I'm definitely one of those statistics.
mm-hmm,
And I think it's just such a potent conversation to be having in this season of how can I be sovereignly in my body and taking charge of my health. How can I better understand my body and my hormones? And how can I really tend at a root foundational level? I think a lot of our relationships with food come from our childhood.
mm,
So a lot of the program is going to be like diving back into aspects of our childhood that might inform the way our relationship with food is, and just so much more.
mm.
I'm really excited about it. So I'll also share a link for that information about that program.
Thank you so much. I know
Yeah.
Victoria and I just took a class with Dr. Kelsey, and even though neither of us are looking to conceive or need that fertility information per se, even just learning how to properly track my cycle
Hmm.
and what hormones link to what kind of symptoms. So that way I know what my body is trying to tell me. Whatever stage you are in your life, if you are someone with a uterus, I suggest reaching out to Dr. Kelsey because she has so much information. Thank you so much for being here with us.
You're so welcome. Thank you for such great questions and just such a beautiful conversation about how we can empower people to take better care and improve their health.
Mm.
Love it.
Thank you all. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm like,
I was like, is there more?
Nope, I guess that's it. Bye. Thank you.
bye.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much.